And we are live. Welcome. Good morning. Happy Friday. Flex your muscles. Let's stretch out. Let's get ready for some activity. We're going to do some heavy activity today. We're going to be working out those brain muscles with lovely Leslie. Is it Jorgensen? Is that the right pronunciation?
Jorgensen, yeah.
Jorgensen. And let's just dive right in. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, who you are, what you do, who you do it for. Give us your story.
Okay, so I live north of Boston and really grew up around here all my life. And in 2004, I decided I was tired of working for other people. I wanted to work for myself and had tremendous skills really managing the whole accounting function for just several small businesses that I'd done in the past, and thought I could probably hang a shingle and make a career out of this. So that was step one. And I got busy and the phone was ringing and I didn't want to say no. So I figured a way to grow my company, which I'm sure a lot of other people have done as well. And it was amazing because what I found was there was all these really talented accounting professionals that wanted to work flexible part-time hours from home. And that's really how we grew our practice in Boston, was working with these talented, accountants that had, most of them, families, young kids, and they wanted to work about 20 hours a week from a home-based office. So even before there was a cloud, we kind of created our own cloud and figured out a way to get virtual really from the get-go. And kind of flash forward, we got to 2013. We had developed a lot of systems and processes and things like that, and decided to take our model and franchise it. So now Supporting Strategies has 55 locations across the United States. We have about 40 unique franchisees, and our team is still based on, accounting professionals that want that flexibility and balance in their life, and everyone is remote.
That's amazing. So, and when I think of a franchise, of course, I think a lot of, your typical franchise, like a fast food restaurant, let's say, right? So I know that the typical scenario there is I buy in, I get 3 locations that I have to build, and I have a certain amount of time in which to build it. But this is a very different kind of business model. So how does it work in terms of having a franchisee buy into a service-based, a bookkeeping service that's franchised?
Sure. So I actually think that's what makes it really cool, is because what we've come up with is kind of that back engine, if you will, that a franchisee can plug into. So they don't need to go bricks and mortar even a little bit. They can work from a home-based office or not. They can get a co-working center, a small space, whatever, but pretty much it's lean and mean. No overhead associated with it. And really what they do within their territory, they do have kind of like a designated territory, but that's for business development. So they're going into their local areas, they're making relationships, they're bringing the clients in, and then they're building their own team of accounting professionals that work for them for their office location, but those folks can be anywhere, and they can actually have clients from anywhere as well. So if you've signed up, you have a relationship with the local CPA and they provide you with a client that's in Texas, even though you're located in Florida, you can take that client. So they get the best of both worlds in being local and having a protected territory, but also they don't have, the kind of boundaries that like a sub shop would, where it's just the traffic that's coming into that storefront.
Okay, and so what you provide your franchisees with is the infrastructure that they need to build this remote-based business, and it sounds like also some guidance on how to work locally in their area and grow their practice?
Yeah, so there's a business development marketing program that we provide to them. So while they're kind of quote unquote the salesperson primarily, they're heavily supported with that. In addition to that, we give them talent acquisition services. So we go and we are always looking for folks to work within our system. We go through a full assessment process, and then we put them in front of them so they can interview those candidates. So we help them get that talent. We also train the talent. So we have what we call Supporting Strategies University, which is, a standard workflow model that everybody gets trained on. And we've also developed our own proprietary software called Workplace, which is, your task management, your time, your training, your best practices library. Everything is within that web-based application. So all these people working from home can plug in and, kind of connect that way.
And before we went live, I heard you say that you were, QuickBooks. Maybe we should call it that. Just
we should call it that.
QuickBooks O.
QuickBooks O.
QBO focused. Although you said you will work with people who have zero, but that's not kind of the core, or do you convert them to QuickBooks Online if they're not in QuickBooks Online, or how do you, and then in the bigger picture, what I'm sort of wondering about now is, and this comes from, me talking to a lot of bookkeepers out there who are trying to run and build their own remote practices, and what I think a lot of us struggle with, and I'm wondering if this is part of what you provide, is the apps that you use, the ecosystem that you build around the core GL product, which let's just say is QuickBooks Online for now. The CRM that you use, the project management software, all that kind of stuff that has to work around the core GL app. Do you provide them with that? And I don't want you to spill any corporate secrets, but as much as you can tell us about what you do there, I think would be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So our model is we made the decision to be Intuit focused. So if someone has a Xero account and they don't want to switch, we'll say, do you want to switch? And if they say yes, then we will, because we're the best at that. So we might as well work on our best tool, but we won't turn them away, kind of a thing if they're stuck on Xero. But absolutely, part of this, supporting strategies university is, people talk about their tech stack. We talk about our toolbox. Mm-hmm. Within our toolbox, we've got levels. So we have sort of, base tools every client uses, like a QBO or a HubDoc. Like that's, every client has certain things that they use. And then we kind of step up from there, So, a core tool would be, what do we use for payables? What do we use for receivables? And so we make selections of apps kind of as we go through that model. And we get up to the end where we call them niche tools. So those are so specialized that we're not going to get really good at the corporate level in terms of spinning out those tools for the community. But what's really neat is that our community talks about, I've got a client that's a yacht club, or I have a client that's, whatever. Has anyone used an app that works with QBO for this situation? So I guess my answer is we kind of are standardized to a point, and then we have a path even as it gets more and more granular, which is nice. And so for each of these tools, it's, how do we use it within our own standard workflow? How do they get trained on the apps? How do we get support for them on the app? So a lot of these apps are supported right through our centralized support desk. So HubDoc's a great example. Somebody's struggling with it, they put in a ticket to our corporate team, and then we have a way forward to get, them directly through to the HubDoc support team. So we sort of help triage that process, which has really helped us with, the adoption of these tools, because it's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is. I know that because a lot of the one-on-one work that I do, especially with accountants and bookkeepers, is around how do I pick the apps and how do I get trained on them, and which one do I pick? How do I
the
pick?
Selection piece.
We were just discussing moments before we went live on our Facebook group about CRM, right, Suchi? Good morning. So, I have, I had narrowed it down to kind of 2 for a while, and now I've got it like honed in, like this is the CRM I'm using. I've found that it's necessary for me to just get, like you said, with the core stuff, to get real focused and say, this is our solution, not a choice, not, hey, look at these 5 choices and pick one. This is it, because I think a lot of people don't want to have to be faced with that choice. If anything, they want to be, on some levels, told, this is what we're going to use. And then it sounds like, if I understood your answer, well, once you get into the more industry-specific stuff, that's where you have to leave room for some flexibility, where they have to decide, hey, we're serving clients in the legal world, so we're going to use Clio, or maybe there's something else we can use to serve the legal clients.
Right, but what's cool about our system is we have approaching 250 folks within our community. And so when it's a discussion of that was just last week on the, is it Clio, is it this, or, I've got a contract, or is it Builder Trend, is it Notify? I mean, people are having these discussions, and then it's like a feedback loop as well to our own internal team. We're like, okay, let's take notes about this. And we have like a pipeline of tools that we kind of work through. And then we're kind of gathering that data from this organization, and, so it's part us dictating it as well as a collaborative piece.
Right. So it sounds like you have your own internal kind of between wall and main. Like we have our group on Facebook where everybody comes in and says, oh, I love this CRM and this is what I'm using. And I love this tool for the, I love Builder Trend for the construction industry, or Co-Constructor. So you have the community that kind of helps each other decide what they've found works well.
Correct.
And so now let's back up a little bit, because you told us a little bit of the story about how you started and built, and obviously what had to have been required of you in order to achieve what you've achieved so far is figuring out how to scale, right? So what are some
Correct.
of the biggest challenges you've faced in terms of scaling?
I think the biggest challenge, hands down, is around the talent equation for multiple reasons. I mean, number one, just finding the right person to start with. And I think that's actually shifting under our feet right now. So you mentioned about QBO and all these tech apps that, feed in and all of that. Our life is so much different today than it was back in 2004 or 5 when I did this, where the people I needed to hire, I wanted folks that had really tight accounting knowledge and knew their way around a balance sheet and, revenue recognition and all of that. But I also wanted them to be comfortable doing like lots of data entry and just a lot of rote, recurring work that they just had to do to get it done because the computers didn't do it for us yet. That person is different than today's person. Today's person needs to be able to make changes quickly, adopt new technology, kind of roll with the punches, problem solve. It's a completely different job description. So I can say for me personally, that's a shift we're going through even within supporting strategies of how do we shift the perfect, job description or the perfect description of person to make sure we're able to work in today's environment. I think that's a challenge. And I think the other challenge is as you continue to scale, how do you bring everybody along on your journey? Both from this is what I believe in, this is the way we do it, this is how we think about customer service, as well as how do we do it? Like literally, what are the steps? How do we go about closing the books or how do we go about doing, X, Y, Z? So you have to be able to distill that down and get that across the board in a consistent way across an organization. And I think part of that is just that infrastructure piece, documentation, training, and things like that, but also developing a management hierarchy as you grow as well. So you can kind of push that down and have that kind of check and balance.
Mm-hmm. I know one of the challenges that I've faced myself and continue to face, especially in terms of the hiring part, is if I want to recruit somebody who's already got those skills, who's got that agility that you essentially described, right? The ability to adopt new technology, they're already commanding a rate that's on par with what I will typically charge a client. So I'm faced with having to really find somebody who doesn't have the experience and train them. Is that your experience, or how do you deal with that?
I've done it a different way. So I appreciate that way. And I haven't done that because I didn't want to have to necessarily make such a big upfront investment. I need to be able to have them hit the ground running. That's why we've gone with more of the, we call it more like the mom model, where, they're willing to leave some money on the table, basically to, keep their skills fresh, do interesting work while their kids are at school. That's been very, beneficial for us. That said, there's only so many moms in the world, so, that want to do this exact job. So, I think a way to do it as well is, and I'm hoping even to break into the greater pro advisor community. I think we have an opportunity, like think of Uber. People go to work for Uber because it's easy. They can plug in and they can have a job. Mm-hmm. My premise is that there's probably a lot of pro advisors out there that have a shingle. They have, maybe good recurring solid 20 hours of work a week. Maybe they want 40, and maybe it's okay to take a little bit less money to plug into a system. They don't have to do business development. They don't have to bill. They don't have to collect. They don't have to deal with that type of it. They can just do the work. And maybe it's okay to take, 50% of the rate to not have the hassle and just say to myself, okay, I'm going to have $30,000 of income or whatever, $50,000 of income, whatever it is, as part of their overall plate. So, that's one thing we're starting to explore. We have several people like that already. Mm-hmm. And I think that's compelling. If you really like to just log in and do it and get out, I think a model like what you're suggesting and what I'm suggesting would be potentially a really good fit.
Right. So now all you need is a mobile app, right? So somebody can, on both sides, right? So your bookkeepers or your franchisees can go on the clock, and the people who need the bookkeeping help can just punch an app and get the supporting strategies available bookkeeping franchisee who can help them.
Which we pretty much have with our workplace software.
Right.
In our system.
Right. Right. I get a chuckle out of it thinking of the Uber model, though, of somebody pulling up on an app and saying, well, I'm here in Chicago and I could use a bookkeeper.
Someone needs me to get their year end wrapped up.
So how have you
in there? I got to tell you.
Right. No, definitely. Look, there's definitely, I was reading and watching a video recently from Gary Vaynerchuk, and he was talking about Uber and Airbnb and these types of businesses which are high value and high velocity, right? And his whole comment was, it should not have happened the way that it did. The guys who started Uber knew nothing about the transportation industry. They were in two other totally unrelated tech industries. The guys who started Airbnb, same basic story. And Gary Vaynerchuk made the point that it should have been somebody in the transportation industry who started Uber. It should have been somebody from a Hilton or a Marriott who started Airbnb as an extension of what they're already doing. So the comment, though, was, we all need to think within our own industries about how we could create our version of that, the high velocity, high value. Here's how in a tap on a mobile app you can get the service that we provide, right? And I don't think it's been quite figured out yet in our industry, but you may be close, and there may be others who are close to something like that. I'm curious, as far as, going back to when you started, before you decided to franchise, how did you get clients? Because that's another area where a lot of, I think, bookkeepers and accountants struggle is how to get clients. I mean, that's something I certainly help a lot of people with. In my case, I did it with a ton of social media marketing and video content production. How did you do it?
Well, first of all, I would love to offline pick your brain a little bit more about how you've been able to engage through social media. I definitely think that's not how we did it. And so there's tons for us to learn on that end. Mm-hmm. What we really did in the Boston area to start with, and now we've had proof of concept in other geographies as well, is we really become part of that local business network. So we are hyper local in the way that we do our business development. So we work to find who are the trusted advisors, not online but offline, in the community that are working with the growing businesses. So we are looking for a very specific type of end client. We're not looking for the little teeny guy that kind of does it themselves and they want you to just check and make sure their QuickBooks is right 4 times a year. We're looking to have them outsource their accounting department to us. And so that's a certain type of client. And so we're doing a lot of networking to find complementary CPAs that don't do outsourced accounting, attorneys, bankers, those types of folks. And we have a very systematic way in which we kind of tap into those communities. Like as an example, we have this program called the Business Boot Camp, where we go into, it's like an MBA in a day, and each one of our locations has one once a year, and then there's a spin-off series on it. So that's an example of, kind of getting out in the community, bringing people together, and we're being seen as, we're educating these small business owners. And through that, we end up getting this referral inflow. So really, we're selling through this kind of channel of other trusted advisors, more or less, as I would say, where 75% of our business is coming from. So the idea for these franchisees, they're doing that in each one of their local communities.
That's brilliant. So people are really building it in their own backyard, which is
That's right.
Something that I've often told people, look, go there first. Even in terms of the social media strategy, target local businesses, build it in your backyard first, and then you can expand out from there.
Right, and what's interesting, even if you do it in your backyard, businesses are highly virtual. So, again, you get a good relationship with someone in your backyard. They might have clients nationally. Mm-hmm. So you're still able to draw on a national set of clients, but you're making those really deep personal connections locally. Right.
I love that. And I remember years ago, when I first started, I started by posting ads on Craigslist. Which I don't do anymore. But that's how I used to get a lot of my business in the very beginning, back in like 2003, before the Craigslist killer got famous. And so that was my version of building it in my own backyard. When Craigslist dried up, I joined my Chamber of Commerce. That was my next sort of version of that. So are you having your franchisees join their chambers of commerce? Are they joining like other networking groups like BNI, or how are they, you talked about how they're kind of going out, reaching out locally, but are they doing it formally, or how exactly are they going about, again, without spilling any corporate secrets?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think the chambers and the BNIs, we sort of see those as good initial training for the franchisees just to get their feet wet and, get used to the whole scene and just start meeting some people. We're finding that the best clients that's not necessarily their watering hole. I mean, we're kind of up to that next level. Like in California, there's Provisors.
I know it well.
It's a group that, I mean, that's an amazing group for us. Unfortunately, there isn't a Provisors everywhere, but there's Provisor-like groups, if you kind of know what that model is of, it's sort of like who are the types of people that go there? Are they CPAs and attorneys and bankers and folks like that that are working with a little bit more sophisticated businesses? We want to be hanging out with those people. And, what's a little bit more challenging about it is, and it takes a little bit of time to prime this pump, but you kind of have to peel back the onion and just, it's almost like you've got to break into it. Like you, right? So you're very connected into this industry and, you know who all the movers and shakers are. And that was probably a process that took time. It's same like these local business communities. There's going to be those really amazing trusted advisors that are plugged in. It takes some time to find them, but once you find them and build a relationship, you might get, 10 to 20 referrals a year from that one person. So we talk about really instead of trying to say, I'm going to go find small business owners, it's find the right relationships that will bring you, will bring those referrals to you.
Right. It's true networking. It's not going for the end result. It's going for the person who's going to send you lots of referrals. And
that's what's worked for us. Now, I think we need to build on that. I mean, the world is, getting, as you know very well, because you're an expert in this, increasingly online. And even what we talk about with our franchisees is even the social media and that kind of thing. It helps to enhance what we're doing with these referral sources. There's so much you can do to then build on those relationships online as well and kind of take it to the next level, right? Which is important for us to continue to get good at.
Yep, definitely, without a doubt. So that's great. You know what? I'm gonna give others the opportunity to unmute and ask questions, and I'll shut up for about 3 minutes if anybody else has anything they want to ask. If you don't act fast, though, I'm going to jump back in and take over again.
Okay, well, I don't know if you saw my chat, Leslie, but I was asking if you were talking about, getting pro-advisors on board. Are you not concerned that they're going to, kind of steal your methodology and also your clients?
I'm not. I mean, I have them sign a non-disclosure, non-compete agreement, of course, at the beginning.
How do you kind of control that, if they're working for themselves?
How do you enforce it, I think, is the real question.
I mean, I think for me, and maybe I'm a little too trusting. I don't know. I believe in people. And I think, if someone's going to come to work for Supporting Strategies and, their MO is they're going to come in here and learn how we do everything and then go and take my clients away. I mean, number one, how many clients are they really going to take? 2, 3, 4, whatever, fine.
Right.
And then the methods and processes, what makes Supporting Strategies special is in part our methods and processes, but someone couldn't steal it and do it. Because a lot of what our value is in, the ongoing development and, enhancement and just all the support systems that go into running it, that even if they said, oh, geez, look at, I now know exactly how Supporting Strategies does their payables process. Like, look at me, I'm going to now be a rock star using this. I mean, what are they really going to do? Kind of in a vacuum. So I guess I'm not really scared about it. I wouldn't be so scared about it that I would look away from the opportunity to say, you know what, there are a lot of, I know so many people that what they really want to do is do the work that they love on a flexible, on their terms basis. If I can help them do that in a way that's, financially and, emotionally rewarding for them, I want to be partners with them.
If I can underscore a few things.
That too. I had in addition to my accounting firm back in the 90s, I had a payroll company, and I had developed a payroll program for unions. We were doing 5 states, and we had this really large shipping company, and I had my manager went to the shipping company and said, we don't need Sarah, and I lost an $83,000 a year client.
Oh, boy.
I had all the documents in place. They were deep pockets. It wasn't worth fighting, but there are things that you can do, not only the non-competes and all that, but my clients actually sign a non-staff stealing clause. It says you take one of my employees within 2 years, it's 30 grand or 25 grand or something. So I make them aware of it, and I make my staff aware of it. But my problem isn't so much finding clients or finding work. it's the process of the system. I just can't, I mean, I'm getting better and better of having a system of working with the bookkeepers and the clients on the managerial level. For instance, I have very detailed checklists for each client because they're so unique. And I have one, you started the balance sheet, you're doing month end, you're going to, do you have a bank rate? Do you, And then I have one client who's heavy in making deposits with vendors. So it's keeping up with those deposits so that when a bill comes through, that somebody's aware that it's either coded incorrectly or they need to bump it up and then use the down payment or whatever. Right. Those skills, those aren't data entry skills. Those are knowing the company, knowing the chart, knowing all the pieces of the puzzle and keeping up with stuff so that I don't come in 6 months later and go, why is this sitting on here from years ago?
Right.
Okay. So how do those are the little details that make me as an owner crazy. Because I have some bookkeepers I don't worry about. They are so tuned in. And then I have others that do that work till 3, 4 o'clock and they're gone.
Correct.
And they'll find it, So how do you deal with remote workers in reviewing their work and at a managerial level so that the product is dead on?
Absolutely. And so I think first and foremost, what we do in the onboarding process, and by the way, what you're talking about, this thing that's those little details and the deposits and all that, that's where we really shine, because we're helping to make those business processes really solid, and we're, it's more than just doing a bank reconciliation. Anyone can do that. That's really where we shine, and so that's where our value really is. So first and foremost, I think in the onboarding process, what we do is sort of say, here's everything that we do that's, common across, our standard way, and here are things that are specific to the client. And before it leaves onboarding, we make sure that everything is documented. And in this workplace system I was telling you about, with a very specific procedure that's actually with that task. So if there's a protocol around vendor deposits, it's like it's written up. So on the forefront, you're letting your bookkeeper know, hey, here's a custom thing that we need to worry about for this client that's specific for them. Do you understand how to do this? And when you do the payables, one of your extra steps is to check that deposits account and whatever.
Right.
And so that's.
So is it a check? Do you have a process where you are actually doing a checklist where I can come in as a manager and say, all right, I don't even need to go look at this because they've gotten, How do you know that they're doing? How do you know they're doing that?
Well, so that would be, you keeping on your example, that would be one of our reoccurring tasks. Would be, kind of doing that, vendor deposit reconciliation, whatever you call it.
Right.
So the manager would just have that on their review process when they do that would be something that they would look at every month.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things
we're talking the software, a system that's within a software product. Do you have your own software product that you use for your franchise?
We have our own software product that we use, and maybe we open it up to the group. I know that there's several others that are available. I'm not as familiar with those because we use our own. But I think you can kind of do it in kind of any system. In worst case scenario, you can even just have, a Google Docs or, something like that. But I think it comes back actually also to the talent question of who's the right person. And you were saying, there's some people that I just totally have 100% faith in, and other folks that, you kind of think they're, maybe just sort of, dialing it in, or just, in there to work their 6 hours and get out or whatever. And maybe they might not be as, focused on the client success as you are. It's not easy to get, we have a term within supporting strategies. We call it Operation Rockstar. Like, we want everyone to be that person you described that you don't have to worry about. But it's not as easy as that, right? Not everyone is that. So you sort of have to say, if they're not, what's the plan of, how do I manage this person a little bit more closely? So maybe your month-end review is a little bit more specific. And then also, as you're continuing to staff, maybe they're not in your long-term staffing plan. Maybe they're there today, but you're always looking around the corner for that next rock star, and your goal is
for
to
the
get
cloning machine.
Like that. Sorry.
It comes down to training, I think. And like one of the processes that I've always kept with me sort of.
Yeah, training, but attitude.
But one of the processes that I've always kept with me from my audit days was the review process that they had, which was how we ensured that things didn't slip through the cracks. And there was a very detailed process. So as a staff auditor, I would go and I would perform my tests. And then that job would be, once I thought I was finished with all the auditing work, it would go to a reviewer, a supervisor. That supervisor would review my job, and they would give me what were called review notes. Now, in those days, it was a piece of ledger paper with a list of things I had to fix or follow up on or questions I had to answer. And I had to, and then it was all documented. So I had to respond to those. I had to either sign off that I had fixed the issue, or if there was a question, I had to write up a work paper and answer the question and put that in the audit file. And I think similarly in the bookkeeping arrangement, if we want to get to a place where we have the right employees who are trained to do the work in a way that we can really rely on them, then we need to have those kinds of processes in place. Like you said, Leslie, we need to sometimes work a little more closely with the person to get them up to speed. And in other cases, people are already right off the bat more autonomous. Obviously, we want to try and find those gems that are more autonomous right off the bat, but we know we're not always going to get lucky.
Right.
So we have to have a process in place for how to get them up to speed. And then there also has to be, and I think, Leslie, you described so well earlier, the changing world that we're living in now and how different it is. And it is kind of a do or die kind of world where it is it's fast paced and it can be high pressure, especially when you're trying to work. You know, it's not a 9-to-5 job. You're running a business in this day and age where things move fast and things change fast. And if you're not adaptable and you don't have the awareness, you're not going to make it. And I think there almost needs to be a vetting process that says, you know, in so many words, if the person is not up to speed within 90 days or whatever it is, then they've got to go. You know, it's just not going to work. Because what you don't want to do, you know, like they say, and I forget who's credited with having said this, you know, you hire slow and you fire fast. Right. So I think that's where the processes need to come in. I also wanted to go back to Suchi's question and your answer, Leslie, and I wanted to underscore a couple of things in terms of the competing factor and somebody taking away from you what you've given them. I think two things need to be underscored there that are really important. Number one, they only get to do that to me once, right?
True.
And number two, they're going to lose what they've plugged into beyond that, right? Because again, it's ever-changing and constantly evolving. So, and also it just goes to their integrity. And if you're the kind of person that's going to come into a system like Leslie's, try and take advantage and then go steal it and build your own, I guarantee you'll fail. I guarantee you will fail because you're in the wrong mindset to begin with. You're not in a success mindset. You're living on a low frequency, and you're just not going to make it. You know, that's my opinion.
I agree. I wasn't necessarily suggesting that someone, you know, was going to be maliciously trying to do that, but there could be sticky situations where you're, you know, well, I work for, like, you know, where the
Sure.
It could have even, and we just had last week, we had, you know, long-term associate, a long-term client, wonderful client, and there's a great role for her within his organization. It's such a good fit, and she's going to take it. And we do have in our contract that we'll get a fee, and I'm super excited for her. It's such an awesome job. You know, she's a super
great attitude.
Young kids, and I'm like, that's awesome. And she said, you know what, this company is growing, and we've already talked about we're going to come back. So I've had that actually, I've had this happen to me a few times. I think this happened to me 4 or 5 times where someone's left to work for a client that I know about. And 4 out of 5, they approached me, you know, in advance and said, we see this fit. And I've agreed, and it's been a successful, you know, situation. So, you know, I think it's just all who you're going to work with. And, you know, you could end up getting burned, but.
And you will. Prepare for that. Somebody is going to burn you at some point.
That you're going to miss the opportunity.
Right. And it's okay. You know, I frequently get asked the question about, oh, aren't you worried somebody's going to steal your content? Somebody's going to, you know, use your video and repurpose. And I've had it happen. And my answer is I'm glad it's my content they're interested in stealing and not someone else's. Right. You know, because it means that there's something to what I've created. And I'd rather than
flattery, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
We have to build the value. There's a value to your franchise and the system, which encompasses so much more than just a process. It's the community, it's the training, it's everything. So
right.
Part of the trick is getting across the whole value of the whole component.
And I don't even think it's a trick. I think it's just having it there. If the value is there, people will recognize it, and that will just shine through. There's no real trick to it. It's just making sure that the value is there. And as long as the value is there, you don't have to worry. And then going back to the review process, and what I experienced as an auditor, and I really do within my own firm try and replicate this when we do the consulting work, is, as I mentioned, I had a supervisor do the review and give me the review notes. Then once I responded to all those review notes and every response was documented, it went back to the supervisor for a double check. And assuming at that point the supervisor was satisfied, he or she would then pass it up to the manager. And then the manager would review it. And we might get another round of review notes based on what the manager found. So there were 2 levels of review beyond my initial work that ensured that nothing slipped through the cracks. Did things still slip through? You bet they did. But I guarantee it was a lot better than what it would have been had we not had 2 very thorough levels of well-documented review. And those review notes became a training tool. It's funny because people used to complain and moan about getting them. And I would half-jokingly act excited when I got review notes. But the reason it was only half-joking was because I actually recognized even that early on in my career that this is how I was going to learn. And this is how
it's a game. It's a game how to not get.
Yeah, how to reduce the number of review notes that I get. Right. Because I didn't want to have to stop and answer those review notes because I had 10 other audit jobs that I needed to complete that week. So it slowed me down, and it could have been frustrating. But at the same time, I said, so my goal is to learn what I did wrong here so that I don't make that mistake again, so I don't get that same review note again.
Well, you know what it is? It's looking at that as a challenge versus, what's the word? One of the things I think is important when I hire is people that can take criticism as an opportunity versus an attack. Yeah. That's been one of my hardest things with hiring is bookkeepers, as my corrections are training, and then some personalities will take that, they cop an attitude. So the trick is how to weed them out in the beginning. There's a certain personality that will take that. They want to improve. They want to be better. They want to be service oriented and be the best at what they can, best that they can be. So do you have a how do you weed out those in the very beginning? How do you hire? Do you have
I think
it goes back to question?
I think it goes back to what Seth is saying. I think one thing that I know for sure, no matter how much assessment and training and questions you ask, and we do all of that, you still might end up with the wrong person. It's sort of just, it's sort of this really difficult thing. So I think Seth has a good point. What he made of, you hire the best people you can, and you're in observation mode for that first quarter of them working with you. And if they're not, you'll know. You know the people. You know the ones that are getting defensive and they're not taking the feedback. Those aren't going to be your long-term A players. But we're working in an environment where our life isn't perfect, and it's going to take time and a lot of effort to get that perfect team. And it's a perseverance piece. We now, the original business that I had, that's now our Boston office. We've got 70 people that work in that office. And that was my baby. And it went from me to 70 people. And we probably, over the years, there was probably hired and terminated some big, I don't even know the number. It was probably some big number, 200 people or something, right? To get to the 70 we have today. It's a process, and it's hard. It's really hard. I wish there was a magic kind of answer, but I haven't found one. If I find one, I'd love to hear it. But and as we've said already, it's also the world is shifting under our feet, and who was good 3 years ago is not as good today because of the technology. Every time we go to roll out one of these tools, getting everyone's arm around a new piece of technology is a lot of work.
Some will go cool, and the others will go no. Yeah.
But again, thinking of my own organization, we have some folks that have been with us for almost our whole history, and they're coming from such a different environment, and so their reaction is, well, we used to always do it this way.
I hate that. I hate that.
How do you, you got to say, well, I understand that, but there's a lot to it. But I think the best thing to do is know who your perfect person is, have that model, have that persona, and that's what you measure people against. And if they can't, through feedback, come up to that level, that's a longer term, yeah. But, again, you got clients and all that, so it might not be an overnight. It's a process. It's sort of like you're curating your team.
Yep. I think the biggest mistakes that business owners make, and this is for all businesses across the board, I'm going to make a blanket statement here, is that we stay in the wrong relationships for too long.
Yeah.
Right. And we stay in the wrong situations for too long. We have a bad client and we keep saying it's almost like being in an abusive romantic relationship where you're like, somehow this is going to work. I know I'm going to be better this time. And, and the reality is we need to learn to get out of those relationships quickly. Right. It's test, test, and retest. And if we test and it's not working, we have to make an adjustment. Right. It's awareness and it's adaptability. The awareness comes into play where, like Leslie just said, we have to have a benchmark to measure everything against. And when an employee, for example, is not working up to standard, like you mentioned, Sarah, you said there's going to be some employees who are going to say, oh yeah, they're going to get excited to learn the new tool. I want all my employees to be like that because I'm building the kind of firm where that's important. I'm building the kind of firm where adaptability is critically important because I always want to be at the forefront. I want to be a cutting edge firm that's always using the latest and greatest technology. And if I have an employee who's going to resist that and say, oh, I've been doing it this way, I've been using this tool, they're not gonna work. Hey, I'll take you back to the pound. Speaking of,
well, you're a tough dad.
I sure am. But you have to have that benchmark and that system where you can measure things against, and you have to know the environment that you're creating that's going to either make or break the people that are going to fit within your organization. Am I wrong, Leslie?
No, you're absolutely right.
So I can't, if I know that I want to build, and that's a choice. I may choose to build a firm that's not so aggressive about technology, that may be a little slower to adopt, in which case I can tolerate people who are a little less agile when it comes to this stuff. But I've struggled with that big time because I'm an early adopter. I'm always trying to play with the latest and greatest, and I'm always trying to play around and test things. And I've had people working with me who have been overwhelmed and admitted to me, Seth, that's too much. I can't take all these different apps and changes in apps. And part of me said, okay, I want to work with them. I want to meet them halfway. And the other part of me said, wait a minute, maybe they're not the right fit for my organization.
Right.
And hey, they're getting excited. One of the benefits of working from home. All right, I'm gonna go get these guys quiet for a second, but I want to, before I walk away for a second, leave off with the next question that I think is really important, Leslie. Why pursue a franchise model as opposed to just building your own organization and opening up more offices and or virtual locations, if you will? What are the pros and cons? And then I'm gonna have to catch part of this on the recording. I'll be right back.
Okay, so I'll answer that question. So, really, there were two reasons why I decided to franchise. Number one, it was a more cost-effective way to expand. So in a franchise model, the franchisee is paying an upfront fee to join, and then really, they're kind of putting in their sweat equity to get it off the ground and to get it developed, and then we get, royalty revenue on their revenues. As opposed to a corporate rollout where I need to go into a city and I need to hire somebody to run that office. That's really, really expensive, and there's no guarantees. And that just seemed, not like something I was able to do at that time. So that was one thing that was attractive. The second thing that is actually even more important than that financial piece is, I had this vision of finding people that wanted to do what I was doing across the country, and that I would be able to work with them as partners to get their own businesses off the ground and allow them to be successful in a business that I had been successful in. And I thought it would be a really kind of fun next chapter. I was kind of, been there, done that with just delivering services in the Boston area. I wanted a new challenge. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun if I work with, a group of people across the country, helping them to do what I love to do, that they love too, and give them the infrastructure and the systems and the processes to make them successful. So I just thought it'd be kind of a lot of fun and a new challenge. So that's sort of more of the, the financial piece is more of my brain talking, where, getting this, partner model built up for myself is more my heart talking.
Leslie, I have a question. Do you have some of your employees that want to convert over and do franchisees with you in lieu of being an employee? Like they are in the system and they enjoy it and now they want to buy in as a franchisee for whatever location?
And we've had 3 do it.
Mm-hmm. I thought
So our Southern New Hampshire, Hartford, Connecticut, and San Diego.
Okay.
I have a question. Are they using your name as branding themselves under your name, or do they brand themselves under their own name?
My name, Supporting Strategies.
So do you have any kind of legal liability for their actions, or what happens if they do something that sort of damages your name?
So we do have, we have insurance at the franchisee level, so they have to have E&O, they've got to have, they've got to have like employee theft, insurance at the franchisee level, and then we have insurance at the franchisor level. And we have stuff in our franchise agreement that sort of protects us. I think at the end of the day, there's a huge amount of risk. There's a huge amount of risk that we get a franchisee that, isn't performing the services to our standards and just isn't kind of doing a good job, per, the way that we like to run things. So, that's why when I decided to become a franchise, a lot of franchise systems are kind of, they give you the toolbox and then you kind of just do it on your own. And I made a decision that I wanted to be a very hands-on franchisor to help protect that quality. So that's why we control the training. We control kind of the standard workflow. We even, in so much as, go in and do random audits of, the franchisees and how they're performing the services. So we've got things in place to help protect that, but it's scary. I got another puppy.
I miss my puppy. I'm stuck in a hotel in Jersey.
Oh gosh. Now my pups are out on a hike right now without me.
I have 3, but one's getting a little rambunctious. I'm going to have to bring him over here and put him in front of the camera and embarrass him.
That's what Archie's doing now.
Is that Ralphie?
That's Archie.
So I'm confused. Leslie, do you have brick and mortar locations, or is everything completely remote? Because I thought you mentioned something about an office.
We call them offices. We call them offices, but they're all virtual offices. We're sort of, when you think of like when CPA firms grow, they kind of have the idea of regional offices and managing directors or managing partners. So we sort of followed that language. So we call them offices. The franchisees call themselves managing directors. Just because I think business owners understand that kind of model. Right. But in real life,
So when you have 70 employees working all virtually, I imagine you must have some kind of communication. So you must be using Slack or something to keep in constant contact with them. Can you share?
Absolutely. So we use Microsoft 365 as our kind of, platform for tools. And so we're using Skype for Business for video and screen share and chat and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And then that workplace software I talked to you about, we do a lot through there as well. So each client has their own page, and all of the email traffic on a client runs through there. So kind of how I think some people might use Slack, we're using our workplace software to manage all of the client communication, so it's centralized in that system.
And now, as a franchisor, I know that when I worked at the last CPA firm I worked with, actually consulted with them. This was after I'd already started Nerd Enterprises, but I had a CPA firm hire me to be kind of an in-charge auditor on some of their clients. And we used to audit a franchisor who was based out here in Los Angeles, and they were subject to audits. It had to be certified and then submitted to the state. I would imagine you guys have to do something similar, no?
Yeah, we need to get an audit every year.
And to make so when you're a franchisor, I forget, is it at the federal level or the state level where you're?
Both, depending on the state. So there's federal regulations, and then I think there's like 14 or so states also have state regulations. So that is one thing. I said that, it's sort of, we thought it would be less expensive franchising versus doing a corporate rollout, but there certainly was tons of upfront expense just doing the regulatory piece, and there's an annual spend as well. To keep all that updated and accurate.
Right. Yeah. There's Yep, and yeah, there's a ton of regulations. That's what I learned, being on the audit side of it, which I thought was fascinating.
It's really crazy. I mean, and it's been, like I said, I mean, I did this in large part to have a next challenge in my career, and it's actually been a lot of fun. I mean, this is a whole different business model, and it's pretty interesting.
Right.
Now,
Hi, Yosef.
I'm sorry. What makes me hesitate is with the whole remote is employee versus contractor.
Right.
So if I'm in Savannah, Georgia, and I want to hire somebody in Iowa, if it's somebody who already has is already self-employed, that's a no-brainer, and they're working with other clients. I can pay them as a contractor, but we're getting into an area where the labor laws are getting so complex. And if I have a remote worker who North Carolina, and they only work for me, now I'm doing North Carolina payroll, and do you give guidance on the
That's a huge pain point for sure. And so what we do with our talent acquisition is we sort of look at it in levels. So depending on how wide you cast your geographical net, the faster you get somebody, right? We have some people that say, like, for instance, our individual in southern New Hampshire, she likes to have like pool parties and barbecues and have her staff over and all that kind of fun stuff. So they have to be able to drive to her house and go out to get whatever. So that's very close by. Whereas our guy in Florida is like, as long as it's in Florida, I'm good. So, and then other people say, I'll take them from anywhere. So we're always looking for folks where we have where we have franchisees. We're always sourcing candidates in those areas. So more often than not, we're able to match at least within the state to help keep the payroll simple. And then we can even get even more targeted if, like the Southern New Hampshire really wants someone very close by. My guidance to them is get the best people you can get, and you might have a little bit more hassle factor on your employment management. It's a pro and a con. So we're it's definitely there's a pro and con there, and it's not an easy answer. I mean, to do it right, and even with the fact that with people that might have their own clients and you can just pay them as an independent contractor, I still think it's a gray area because we do have a lot of control over what they're doing. They have to use our methods. We're managing them very tightly.
Right.
So our guidance is that everybody's on a W-2. And there's a lot of red tape associated with that. So we're continuing to figure out how we can streamline it, but it's not been an easy answer for us.
See, I would think the safe thing to do is just have everybody be W-2 and not do subcontractors, right? Because
that's what we've done. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to, especially in a model like yours. And I'm starting to become of the mindset, even without being franchised, that for years I did subcontractors exclusively. I refused to put anybody on payroll. I've just changed that. I actually hired my first employee this month because I've decided a number of things along those lines. Number one, and I've heard this over the years and I resisted it. I resisted the temptation to agree with it. But I really feel like when you have a W-2 employee, you have somebody who's truly dedicated to your cause and your company, whereas a subcontractor is going to be a different mindset. Now, interestingly, I thought that was the reason I wanted subcontractors, because I wanted people who had more of an entrepreneurial spirit to them. I felt that they would better serve my interests, but it turns out no, because they're out to serve their own interests as subcontractors ultimately. Whereas a W-2 employee, you have somebody who's part of your team. I want little nerd logos flowing through their veins. You know what I mean? When they're,
I'm right on a border, so South Carolina, then it's South Carolina employment. So you have to set up a registered agent.
you got to deal with the red tape.
Now we've got hours. We really have to do.
Yep, you got to deal with the red tape. No
track
question.
The hours, and remote workers can be a problem because it's like me. We work in spurts. We work all the time. We can work when we have time, and so we're answering emails or whatever. And so collecting time legally for that is getting more and more complex. I almost envision, I don't know, as we become more of a remote workforce in all industries, that there's got to be some sort of...
Well, they have to track their time. In order to remain compliant, they have to track their time. There's no question, and we just need to use the apps. We need to use T-sheets, right? And we need to get them using T-sheets to track their time to make sure. I mean, this employee that I've hired, we have an arrangement. because I struggled with I don't want to deal with paying people by the hour really, and I don't want to deal with even paying people a straight salary. I want to reward people for their productivity. So what I did was I came up with a blended compensation package. So they get a base, which is based on essentially minimum wage, and then they get a revenue share. So the more clients they work on, the more shares of more revenues that they get from more clients, and then that base serves as a draw against that revenue share. So they're guaranteed to get the minimum wage they need to get, but hopefully they're not planning on sticking around for minimum wage, right? And so that's how I'm putting together my compensation package. I've been disinclined to share that too publicly because I feel like it's very sort of forward thinking and something I really want to work on and build and prove. But I'll share with you here that that's kind of how I'm developing it. And, but we'll still have to track time because we need to make sure that if I add up their hours and divide that into the dollars that they're not, but the reality is if they're getting the revenue share and they're doing what they're really here to do, especially in our kind of business, there's no way they're making minimum wage and certainly not less than that. I just had the discussion with my employee about the base versus the revenue share. And I said, I know that for the hours you're putting in with the revenue share that you're getting, it's well over minimum wage when we divide it in. And I said, if it ever feels like it's getting close, let me know. But the reality is, and what I didn't say is, if it ever feels like it's getting close, something's wrong. We're not being as productive as we should be.
And I don't want to worry about overtime because I don't want an employee who's working more than 40.
Absolutely.
I want them to have a life. And if they're working over 40, they're not having a life. So I don't want them to be like.
Well, balance is definitely important, and yeah, so you can set forth a rule that says you're not allowed to put in more than 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week.
You need to get approval ahead of time is what we do.
Right.
Which there could be some
according to the labor, according to the Department of Labor, if they do anyway, you're required.
If they do anyway, but so they break the rule once, you give them a write-up. They break the rule twice, you're done.
It's a management thing.
You got to be able to follow our protocols and rules. Otherwise, you're not going to fit in our organization, right? And then you document. So you give them a write-up, make them sign it, and say you put in overtime. I have to pay you for it required by law, but now you're going to sign this that acknowledges that you did it without the consent that was required. And if you do it one more time, you're done. Not 3 strikes, but 2 strikes.
So Leslie, are you using something like T-Sheets?
We have it built into our workplace software. So we track time within our task module. So when they pick up a task, they track their time to the task. And then we get the time data from that system.
Wow, it's all one. That's nice.
I think you have to with a franchise, I would think. It would be very difficult, probably, I would think, to implement all these outside-based apps. Like it sounds like you have your own proprietary project management system and time tracking system, and I imagine those two, well, it's all integrated, no?
Correct.
That's the value of the franchise.
That's one of the values.
Yeah.
That is huge. It's taken me 30 years to even get where I am, and to have, if I were just starting out, I really would definitely look into your model because it gets you, I don't know, you join something that's successful right off the bat, and it just kills a lot of that learning curve.
All right, so we've got about 2 minutes left. Anybody else have any questions? Gina, you've been quiet all morning.
Sorry, been muted, keeping all the distracting noises down for you. Sorry. No, this is all interesting. It sounds great. A lot of eye-opening stuff. I really like the networking. I like the pulling together of resources. And your in-house app or whatever it is you're using sounds wonderful. Would you ever sell that?
We looked into it, and in fact, I think if Suchi's still on the line, we had discussions of that. I forget where we were.
Yeah, at Sleater we started,
Sleater. And, we went down that path. We kicked some tires on it at a few of the shows, and I think there's interest, but, how many things can we do well, right? So can we become a software company at the same time we're trying to do a national franchise? So for now, we've kind of put the commercialization of it on ice. Not that we won't ever do it, but, we got to focus on our core business first and foremost.
Do you have in-house developers? You must have in-house developers that keep it.
We used an outsourced development company to build it, and And in fact, they're a supporting strategies client, which is great because they know from the client aspect.
Awesome.
And it's been great. They're a local company here in Cambridge, in fact, part of our network, and, go to all our events and things. So it's been, while they're outsourced, they're very familiar with the organization. So it's been,
that's a blessing.
but
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
Good
thing. If we
developer.
really commercialized it, it would have been, in-house development and a whole new set of things. So,
Leslie, I'm
Yeah,
so glad you
really
said what you
overzealous.
said about being focused and not, going off into the weeds on something, because I have been so focused myself on that part of growing and developing a business this year. I've looked at my own path and said, I've gone so many different directions because I've always felt there were so many different things I could do, and I felt that there were, and still feel there are a lot of things I can do really well. But another lesson I took from watching some Gary Vaynerchuk videos earlier this year was it might well be that you can do a lot of things and do them really well, but there's only going to be one or two things that you can do really well, so well that you're doing them essentially better than anybody else out there. And that's what we need to focus on. I got pitched this week by somebody on another business opportunity, and I just had to nip it in the bud and tell them, you know what, I already have a business, I make a really good living at it, and I love getting up to do what I do every day, and anything else right now would be nothing short of a distraction, and I can't allow that. The power of no. The power of just saying no, even though it might be tempting, right? Because you might be able to create something incredibly valuable, but it's a distraction is what I heard you say.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
So I love that. All right, we are at 1 minute past the hour. So Leslie, thank you so much for taking
Thank
the time
you.
to be
This
with
was
us today.
great.
I think it was incredibly informative, and I would love to talk to you offline about some things.
Let's do that. And will you be at Connect and or
I'm
whatever
speaking
Slater's
at-
now called?
I'm speaking at Connect. I will not be at Accountex. The next conference for me, the only conference for me for the rest of this year is going to be QuickBooks Connect.
Okay, I'll see you there.
All right, very good.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, everyone.
Bye.